Talofa lava, this is Pacific Waves from RNZ Pacific. I'm Susana Swiswiki. Coming up.
Now, as we say all around the Pacific, when it comes to our cousins, stick to the law when you get to our country.
Multi-entry visas granted for Pacific nations. Also,
I love my people, and the more that we can acknowledge each other, I think we can do so much more than we're already doing.
Pasifika rugby legends honoured at Hall of Fame, and Hunts for Niue, a book celebrating curiosity. New Zealand's Foreign Minister Winston Peters, while in Nuku'alofa for his first stop on a week-long Pacific tour, has announced major changes for Pacific Islanders applying for visas to visit Aotearoa. From July, visitors from Pacific Islands Forum countries who apply for visitor visa to New Zealand may be eligible for a multi-entry visa, allowing them to visit Aotearoa as many times as they want for 24 months. Also, in a year-long trial from November, Pacific passport holders travelling from Australia with an Australian visa will be able to visit New Zealand for up to 3 months. Grace Tinetali Whiwa'ai, who's in Tonga, has more.
The Deputy Prime Minister says under the new rules, Pacific nationals will be able to visit Aotearoa as many times as they want over 24 months, with a total stay of 9 months in an 18-month period.
That's a change from our standard settings, which usually grant a 12-month visa that allows for a total stay of 6 months in a 12-month period. Now, as we say all around the Pacific, when it comes to our cousins, stick to the law when you get to our country and don't overstay it.
In another announcement, Pacific Islands foreign member country passport holders travelling from Australia with an Australian work, student or family visa can visit New Zealand visa-free for up to 3 months. The free movement of people in the region has been more frequently asked for Pacific leaders, including from Fiji, Samoa and Tonga. Mr. Peters says full visa-free travel might be granted in the future, but not now.
The law looks fantastic until you get in front of the Minister of Finance or the Minister in charge of Customs and all the ministers are responsible, and you find what the cost of administration is. It's quite huge. We're trying to make sure that we arrive at a reasonable cost.
More than 60 countries are currently on New Zealand's visa waiver list, and New Zealand's Green Party has been pushing the government to include the Pacific. Green's Foreign Affairs spokesperson Te Anau Tui Ono, who is with Peters on the Pacific tour, says the geopolitical landscape has changed. China is becoming more dominant, and New Zealand needs to demonstrate its part of the Pacific family.
You've got all these other countries, like you've got UK, you've got the USA, you've got Mexico, you've got Israel, all of these other countries. How is it not expensive for them, but too expensive for the Pacific?
New Zealand's Deputy Opposition Leader Carmel Sepuloni, who was also on the trip, says more needs to be done and Labour is willing to explore these options.
I think that they are good first steps, but there has been an ask and a desire to see an opening up of the borders and to see changes to visa requirements for Pacific countries for quite some time.
Immigration advisor June Ranson says the big change is in New Zealand allowing free visa travel for those with an Australian visa.
It looks clearly that New Zealand immigration is relying on Australia to assess the risks of these people.
She says New Zealand immigration will be keeping an eye on how people support themselves while in New Zealand and if they leave on time.
It's a good idea to give it a trial because, there's been a lot of conversation about these Pacific Island people being so disadvantaged. And I know one of the concerns is that they don't have enough incentive to go home.
Mr. Peters and his cross-party delegation leave for Hawaii tomorrow.
Auckland's Eden Park Stadium usually delivers world-class sports on its pitches, but on the rare occasion, its venue was filled with glitz and glam on Thursday night, celebrating Pasifika excellence at the 2025 Pasifika Rugby Hall of Fame event. The second class of inductees to the Pasifika Rugby Hall of Fame included former All Black captain Fa'alongo Tana Umanga, Monique Hirowana, the first woman of Pacific heritage to win the World Rugby Player of the Year award, among many more legendary rugby superstars. Coco Lance attended the event and filed this report.
The legendary La'aule Savai Sir Michael Jones said the event is about inspiring future generations.
Pasifika we are excellent. You know, we are creative, we're innovative, we're talented. Yes, we're humble, but yes, we need to inspire the next generation. So I think for us, the greatest thing is that to be able to inspire, those other in our community, the next generation, and bring belief and have a real sense of who we are.
Blackfern's youngster, Sylvia Brunt, received the Monique Hirovana Breakthrough Women's Player of the Year award. She said it was an honour, paying homage to her people.
I love my people, and the more that we can acknowledge each other and uplift each other, I think we can do so much more than we're already doing. We're already doing great things, and it's something really special.
Wallace Satiti was the recipient of the Wasale Serevi Breakthrough Men's Player of the Year award. While he has been off due to an injury, Satiti said that being in the presence of his Pacific counterparts always hits home.
Oh, it definitely hits home for me. Definitely feel grounded being here in this space. So, like I said, extremely grateful to be here, and we've got a lot of Pasifika excellence out there, and to be able to be in this space, help showcase it, it's special, and yeah, like I said, exciting.
Legendary women's player and former World Rugby Women's Player of the Year, Monique Hirovana, said it felt surreal that people recognised her and encouraged the presence of more Pasifika women in the game.
Very exciting because people are recognising me, and I'm a very humble person, so to be able to feel that excitement and energy from them is actually, it picks you up and makes you feel great. Pasifika women have a natural flair and some natural talent to be able to display in all the sports they play. And rugby could do with a lot more Pasifika women to hang in there and represent the countries and focus on and being great players.
Next year we'll see the 2026 Pasifika Rugby Hall of Fame event.
An expert in US foreign policy says the Trump administration's domestic priorities are impacting its posture on competition with China in the Pacific. Michael Walsh, an affiliated researcher at the Georgetown School of Foreign Service, says a major focus of the Trump administration is outcompeting China on all fronts. But he says its domestic push to cut government spending is currently at odds with the need to invest in countering China's growing influence in the Pacific. Koroi Hawkins spoke with Michael Walsh, who says it's really easy for President Trump to put the Biden administration's undelivered promises in the Pacific on the chopping block, as illustrated by Trump's botched announcement of an ambassador to New Zealand and Samoa ahead of his inauguration.
When he made that announcement, he neglected to mention the Cook Islands and Niue, which is interesting because Cook Islands and Niue had just been recognized by the United States as sovereign and independent states. And usually when you recognize, under customary international law, you can't revoke that recognition once you extend it. And so the question became at the time whether or not the Trump administration was intending on revoking its recognition of the Cook Islands and Niue. So that was a very serious question because that would have had knock-on effects for things like Western Samoa or the Palestinian territories or elsewhere in the world. And so it was a really interesting question about whether the president would reverse what the Biden administration did. In parallel with that, another issue that was raised was in the appointment, the Biden administration had made a commitment back in 2023 to establish a resident U.S. ambassador for Samoa, which means a separate ambassador from New Zealand. And so by declaring that he was nominating for New Zealand and the independent state of Samoa, he effectively was signaling that they were going to merge that position or maintain that merging of that position as a single resident ambassador moving forward and not follow through on that other commitment that the Biden administration had made. So I think that's really the context to understand where this whole issue started. You had two separate problems. The first problem was that they had failed to mention the Cook Islands and Niue. And the second problem was they had now signaled that they were going to appoint a single resident ambassador for both New Zealand and the independent state of Samoa. So the inauguration happened. After the inauguration, the president starts to submit the nominations. And the nomination was formally sent to the Senate after this had been pointed out to the new administration, and they didn't correct it. They They submitted exactly how he said he intended to submit it. It was for a U.S. ambassador in New Zealand and to the independent state of Samoa. At some point, either somebody in the administration or somebody in the Senate caught this issue, and the nomination was withdrawn, and it was resubmitted on April 1st. And so this revised nomination now is a nomination for a U.S. ambassador to New Zealand, the independent state of Samoa, Cook Islands, and Niue. So they've resolved one part of the problem that we're talking about. They have failed to resolve the second part of the problem, and it's unclear whether that's because they don't intend on honoring the commitment that was made to have a separate resident U.S. ambassador to Samoa or the independent state of Samoa, or it's because it's just another oversight.
A new children's book will soon be making its way to homes and hearts of Pasifika families. Called The Hunt for Niue Tupu, the story is centered around Ana and Papa Motu, who set off on their backyard adventure, examining the different stages of niu, or coconuts. Published by Mila Books, Hunt for Niue Tupu is a celebration of curiosity and sharing of cultural knowledge. I spoke with the author, Inangaro Wakaafi, about her book.
Whakailahi. So my book is about Niue Tupu. Niue Tupu is a sprouting coconut and is actually my favorite food, and it reminds me of my childhood. So this book is, I guess, a reflection of the adventurous life of a child growing up in the islands. And, you know, you can find so much adventure in your backyard, especially in Niue, where I grew up. And I'm just really excited that finally there's a book that has stories of home that people can learn a little bit more about where I'm from.
So why a children's book? I mean, you could have gone down producing videos about Niuean culture, but you specifically chose books. So what was behind that decision?
I think it was a chance meeting, actually. So I went to a book launch for Emily Sione's book a few years ago about A New Dawn. And at that book launch, I found out that she was part Niuean, and I've done lots of other work before, but I've never actually written a book. And her publisher was there at the moment, at that time, and she actually spoke to a few of us who were there and said, "Have you guys ever thought about writing a book?" And I'm like, honestly, no. I mean, I like to write, but I've never thought of a children's book. And it just so happened that during the mentoring program with Mila's books, with Dahlia, our little group, you know, everyone had ideas of what they wanted to write about. I had lots of different ideas, but then it came down to one story. What would you like your first story book to be about? And I thought, Niue has this hold on me ever since I was a little 7-year-old going back home to Niue. And I was like, yeah, I want it to be dedicated to my island and talk about my life growing up there.
Do you feel there's a lack of information about Niue and its culture?
Yeah, I feel that as Tangata Niue, so I'm of Niue and Cook Island heritage. On my Niue side, we have a lot of people who tell stories, right? Who can write stories, but not a lot of it is published in a sense. And even our greeting, like when people say Pacific greetings, people always tend to butcher the Niue, you know, whakalawhalahiasu. And when you ask people, oh, what do you know about Niue? And they're like, oh, I'm not sure. So for me, I'm like, okay, if we're going to have stories out in the world, and we need our young ones, especially those who are of mixed Pasifika heritage like myself, to proudly fly that yellow flag. And if it means telling some stories and having characters with names from back home, and then in a storybook for children so they can learn early and just be proud of where they come from, then I think I would have achieved, you know, something that we set out to do with this particular book. But I've always been someone who loved reading as a child. And growing up in Niue, we didn't have lots of libraries like you do here in New Zealand, but we had lots of storytellers, from the aunties and the nanas who would help us to read us books or read from the Bible stories. There was lots of different ways that we could get stories, and there are lots of ways that that were not necessarily written form. So our storytelling comes in the form of song and dance, through our arts and our crafts and our legends and our myths and those types of things. So I think that we need to be a bit more bold, I guess, and just take a leap of faith to share our stories from our perspectives a lot more.
I can definitely hear in our conversation how proud you are of your Niuean culture and your efforts to have more Niuean stories out there, especially on mainstream platforms. You yourself being a broadcaster. But I was just wondering, because this book touches on the intergenerational connections, why was it important to you to have that in this story? Are we starting to forget to foster those relationships with our elders?
I think that especially if you are living away from home when you don't get to see it that often. So growing up in the islands, you're literally raised by a village, right? You've got people that are your neighbors, are actually your family. And you have lots of opportunities to engage with, from your grandparents to the aunties and uncles, the cousins. Some of these aunties and uncles may not necessarily be connected to you by blood, but because they're within close proximity, it's a lot easier to see that intergenerational sharing of knowledge and also learning. And I found that living here in New Zealand, we don't get those opportunities that often. And there's so much that we can learn when we, listen to our elders, their stories, what their lives were like, because they can give us a bit of wisdom that prepares us for a future that, so we don't have to go through the same kind of struggles. And I find that because I grew up with that village, when I come here to New Zealand, I never really thought about it that much until having to live here. And when you're the minority, and then you listen to the stories and how they are told and how Pasifika people are portrayed, it's a bit skewed. And I'm like, no, that's not us. That's because the stories that are being told are from a lens that don't understand that there's a lot more to us. There's many layers to us. And it's often we are misrepresented. And I think that's why it's important for us to tell our own stories and to give our young ones that, because I found, just watching my father, for example, my father was very different with his parenting when it came to us as his children. And then when I see what he's like with the grandchildren, there's a different kind of relationship there. So that's why I thought I wanted to share that through this book. Different generations living together, learning together, finding adventure together. And this is something that I hope that we try to help our children by having grandparents present. Because when I talk to young people, Pasifika, who were born and raised in New Zealand, the ones who are able to speak the language a lot better are the ones who are actually left with their grandparents. So there's so much importance in that transferring of knowledge, transferring of language, transference of culture.
Thank you so much, Ina, for your time. That's the end of our Talanoa, but is there anything else that you'd like to share?
I'd just like to say thank you to all the people who have laid down the foundations for us to be able to tell our story. So I'd like to thank Mila's Books for their support in this journey, helping mentor some of the authors to bring their stories to life. But I'd also like to remind people that you don't just become a storyteller when you publish a book. That is one way that we can do it. But keep sharing our stories, keep encouraging our children to learn. So this book is written predominantly in English, but it does have some Wangahau Niue words. And I know it's a story that will resonate with a lot of Pasifika people because the new which is the coconut, is the tree of life for us as Pasifika people. And then when we think about the way that the term coconut's been used to describe Pasifika people, not necessarily in the best light, but I'd like to think because the Niue is, it provides us with life, it's useful, I would like to think that as people, that is what we also bring or take with us wherever we move, and that we're able to, set down roots and find opportunities to grow more young people who are proud of being not only tangata Niue or Cook Islanders, but proud to be Pasifika, especially when they're living outside of our motherland. So, whakahohoni ke tau tangata whakatumau ke tau lahau e tau tālahi hatu tōla tau tangata ke whakamalolo whoke e tau atu hautupuhaki. So this is for the next generation, and I'm really grateful for my tupuna for giving us the gift of the language and culture that enables us to be able to tell our stories.
That's Pacific Waves for today. For all episodes, head over to rnz.co.nz/Pacific. We're also on Spotify, Apple and iHeartRadio. From myself and the RNZ Pacific team, tō whā, sui fua.